to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to be analyzing the 3 games that I played in an in-person tournament yesterday. So I went to an in-person tournament yesterday, and it was a quads tournament, which means there's 4 people and each person plays the other 3 people in their quad. And yeah, we'll see what happens. And disclaimer, if you're looking at the title and you're just here to see the 2 bishops game, then you can skip to game 3. But the other games were pretty interesting as well, so I thought I'd make a video on this and share my experience with all of you. Let's get straight into game number 1. Alright, game number 1, I had the black pieces against someone who's roughly my rating. I think my USCF rating was about 1190, and my opponent's rating was 1150 or something like that. She played the queen's pawn, and now there's 2 moves for black, knight f6 and d5. There are other moves like e6 and f5, like the Dutch defense and the Horwitz defense and moves like that. But the main 2 moves are d5 and knight f6. I went ahead and played d5 because I'm pretty comfortable playing the Slav defense against the queen's gambit. I've played this many times, and I'm okay with that. She went for knight f3 instead, and if she goes bishop f4 later on, it's the London system. If not, it's the Zugatorit variation. I decided to just copy her, and we got into this London system game. E3, E6, and now I thought she was gonna go C3, knight D2, maybe bishop D3, and play a normal London system game, which she kind of did, but in her own way, because she went A3 first to prevent bishop B4 for whatever reason. Like, usually in the London you don't go bishop B4, you go bishop D6, which is what I did next, but she wanted to prevent any annoying pins, I'm assuming. So we got bishop d6. She immediately moved her bishop back, and then I went c6. I completed the pyramid. This is known as the pyramid in the London. Both the white and the black players both usually get the pyramid. This is the type of pawn structure you want to be in. And then she went for c4, and I thought maybe we'd transformed into a queen's gambit, but then again, not really, because the queen's gambit, there wouldn't be a pawn on e6, right? It would just be c6, and this bishop would be somewhere over here. So, whoops, I accidentally skipped ahead a few moves. After I castled, she developed her knight, we traded, and then I developed my knight. So, yeah, I wanted to develop my knight here, but then that would leave the bishop hanging, so I traded first and then developed. She went for c5, trying to gain more space on the queen side, which is honestly probably what I would have played, so I think it looks like a pretty natural move. Not sure why computer thinks it's an inaccuracy. I also played queen a5, which again is an inaccuracy, but sounds pretty human to me, trying to maybe create some counterplay over here, or get the queen involved in the queen side and maybe play b6 later on. We get b4, making this big pyramid and attacking my queen. That's not how pawn chains work. There we go. I moved the queen back to c7. Notice I didn't go back to d8 because then I would have just wasted 2 moves for no reason. But instead I went to c7 so that at least I'm controlling a diagonal here, and I could get a pawn break in the future. Now my opponent went bishop d3, offering a trade, and I decided to accept it. And now I do go for this pawn break idea. Now, you have basically 2 options. You can take this, or you can move the queen to f5, which is what the computer is saying. Now, the reason why you can't just do nothing, for example, if you do a nothing burger move, now I have e4 targeting the queen and the knight. So you either have to move the queen out of the way, and then, whoops, I went forward and moved. You have to either move the queen out of the way like this, and then after I push, move the knight back, or you have to take. Instead, what she did was e4. And now this was kind of funny. We had 4 pawns in the center. And a sophist says it's a blunder, but honestly don't think why it's a blunder. I think maybe it should be like a mistake. But, I mean, it only goes from minus 0.3 to minus 1.3. So it only goes down like 1 point. So I don't think it should be considered a blunder, maybe a mistake or an inaccuracy or something. But anyways, e4 is a blunder. And the reason is because I can take this. And after I take, you have to take back. And then I take here. And you can't take with the knight because now I have rook e8. And I pin you and I win this knight. And yeah, you can go f3. But then I actually can just go queen g3 because the knight is pinned, right? So you can't take my queen. And we're just up a pawn, right? So that's why this is a bad move, because after I take, I'm just up a pawn now. And the best move is to just move out of the way and, acknowledge the fact that you lost a pawn. But I didn't see that because, I didn't see the entire rook e8 idea, which is why I didn't go for this line. Because I thought, oh, it's just a draw, right? Like if I take here, even this is not possible because you just pin the queen. But, if I didn't play rook e8, just a random move, well, now it's actually, wait, what? Oh, it's because queen h7. But like if I go here, for example, it's just a draw. So that's the reason why I didn't go for that. And I missed it. And instead I took this pawn, which is not a horrendous move. It's still a draw. But, I did not capitalize on this winning idea. My opponent takes back. And now I make a mistake. The first mistake that I made in this game. So Stockfish says you can take here. And then you just move your knight here. And you target the queen. You defend against checkmate. And after, the queen moves, not there, of course, because of the fork, but, after the queen moves, then you just push, and it's all good. However, I was thinking that, I'm not sure exactly what I was thinking, but I felt like if I take, then it's hard to prevent against this checkmate. I'm somehow going to lose a pawn. So I was thinking that after this, I think I just forgot that I can go knight f6 defending this. And I thought I had to play here. And yeah, Stockfish says it's equal, but after it takes, I felt like I was down a pawn and this was losing for me. Which is the reason I decided to avoid queen h7 threats completely and just play h6. Which is actually not too bad. Minus 0.3, plus 0.9. Okay, maybe it's a little bit bad. But, yeah, because now queen h7 is completely off the table because the rook is just cut off, right? But the reason this is bad is because knight takes, and now I lose a pawn. Stockfish likes taking with the knight better for reasons that I don't understand, but nonetheless, I'm down a pawn. So after this happened, she played d takes e5, and now I make another mistake with knight d7. So, yeah, the entrant really wants rook f8, or rook f to e8, pinning the pawn to the king so that they cannot take. But, I was also considering knight g4, which is the second top move, with the idea that I can go here, if queen e4, and then pin, like this. And if f4, then we have f6. That was a move I was considering, but at the end of the day, I decided that I don't want to go for this for some reason. So I decided to go back, which is apparently worse. But now, the only good move in the position is queen to d6, trying to trade off the queens, and being up a pawn and having this very nice pawn chain and pawn structure in general. So this is how you win the game if you're white. But my opponent didn't do that, and instead went knight g5, which is an absolute blunder. And here there was only one good move for me. Honestly, I was thinking that this might be a brilliant move until I saw this move, because it is kind of brilliant in the sense that you're sacrificing a knight, and I can't take because this is just checkmate. So it's brilliant in the sense of that, but there is one move here, and I'm sure since Stockfish is on, you guys probably know what it is already. Queen takes e5. And now the game is basically over because this is a triple 4. And I guess you don't lose the rook because if you move the king out of the way, then the rooks connect each other, so you don't lose the rook. But, you know, you're gonna lose a knight with check, and even if f4, I can go back and defend my knight, and this is kind of a lost game afterwards, which is exactly what happened. So king d2, I take the knight, king moves out of the way, and now I decide to go for this just to get the queens off the board, simplify, and go into a winning endgame with an extra knight. So I don't really think I have to explain the moves afterwards. There weren't any crazy plot twists. I'll just fast forward a little bit. We traded queens. She got a little bit of counterplay, but I was able to go b6 and make sure not to hang any free pawns. And then we traded. I was trying to go a5, a4, and then bring my rook up here to take this pawn. She attacked. I defended. She declined the trade. Yeah, I went a4. And then I offered a trade. I got my rook in and took a few pawns. Moved my knight out of the way. Attacked this pawn with my knight. And then she doubled up, and this got scary for 1 second until I realized that I can check and then take this with check. And this is not actually a threat because anytime I can actually just go rook f8 and defend if it gets to that point. But yeah, we checked for a while. I checked with my rook, defending the knight through an x-ray. The king went forward, and now I played rook b8. And of course, if you take this, then this is a ladder's mate. So she had to block with the rook. And then computer says that trading is actually better here, because I can go here and win the rook through a skewer. But I decided to do it the opposite way, which is checking first and then taking the rook, which is slightly worse apparently. But yeah, after this, the game was basically over. And then she had to sack her rook. And then a few moves later, we got the checkmate. So yeah, that was my first game. Pretty nice start. I got a 83.5% accuracy game. So pretty happy with how that went. Just a little blunder here that I didn't capitalize on. But after that, I think I capitalized on all the mistakes and had a pretty decent game. Alright, let's move on to game number 2. Alright, game number 2. I had the white pieces for this game, and I started things off with e4. We got e5, and I went into my favorite Italian game. Now, I think this person did not learn the theory for the Italian game, the sharp line that I play. So I usually play this line in my tournaments, and I even made a video about this. If you guys want to learn it, I'll put the video link in the description and you can go check it out. But basically the point is you're going c3 to prepare d4, and after takes takes, you have 2 pawns in the center while black has none, and you just have a positionally better advantage, better position than black. So the move here is knight f6, and then the line gets really deep, and one variation is like 20 moves long. It's like d4, e takes d4, c takes d4, bishop b4, knight c3, knight takes d4, castles, bishop c3, d5, bishop f6, rook e1, knight e7, rook e4, d6, bishop g5, knight g5. Right, so it's super long. But my opponent unfortunately did not know the theory, so, or maybe they were trying to try something new, so they instead played h6, which is a mistake, and apparently b4 is better than d4 here. Wow. Okay, well, that's something new. I don't know that, so I decided to go for d4, because this is what I would have done if any other move like knight f6 or d6 would have been played. So I go for that. He takes, I take, and actually, if the knight were here instead of the pawn, bishop b4 is better because you gain a tempo. But in this line, somehow, when my opponent played, bishop b6 is actually better. Which is really interesting, because just because of this one knight being here, it's so different. Because now bishop b4 check doesn't do anything. I can just block, and there's nothing for black. But in the previous line, the knight was here, so it can take on e4. And I can't take because I'm pinned. So, wow. huge difference. Anyways, after bishop b6, I decided to go for d5, attacking this knight. And if the knight had just gone back to e7, or just gone back to b8, he would have been fine. Like, it's not terrible, right? It's plus 1.7 if you know, like, the exact move order of how to play this. But, like, if you're a human, this is fine. Like, you can play this. But he went for knight a5, which is very much not fine, as I will show you. I went bishop d3, saving my bishop because he was targeting it. And now I'm threatening b4, trapping this knight. And there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you cannot somehow defend the knight. You cannot somehow, like, if this bishop weren't here, maybe you can move this pawn and get the knight over there. Like, even that's not possible. Right, so he decides to go for d6, try and develop this bishop, but it's too late. b4 targets the knight, and I will take it on the next move. I do have to give him a little bit of credit, though, because he goes for queen f6, which is arguably the trickiest line here, because if I just take the knight, queen takes, and this is actually equal. So, don't mind Stockfish, it's just, you know, like, if you're a human and engine is different, right? So, if you're a human playing this, it's very much equal. It's not plus 3.5. So, that's the reason why queen f6 is tricky to play against. So I go for e5 instead, disconnecting the queen's attack on the rook. He takes, and now I take the knight. And then he takes, I block with the bishop, we trade, he goes knight e7, I give a check, and then I bring my knight in, attack his queen, he moves it, I check him, and basically what's happening here is that I'm just up a knight for 2 pawns, so I'm just trading everything off. Wow, actually trading was the best move. I was considering in the game not taking and somehow trying to go for a checkmate since this king is so weak, but apparently trading and trading again is the best move. And then castle. Apparently rook c8 was a bit of a mistake because now the queen can take. And then, I mean, this is still winning for me. It's +2, but what it was before is plus 3.6. So apparently it's a mistake compared to that. But he goes for queen e4. So now I trade off the rooks, or I guess first I move the rook and then he trades the rooks. And then I start attacking with my queen. And at this point, the game is just over. Right? He blocks. Now I could take and then go into an endgame where I'm up a piece. But I decided to look for a way to finish the game immediately because I'm hungry and I want to go on to the next round so we can get lunch afterwards. You know, just kidding. I want to find the fastest way to win. So I go for queen c5 instead, which is the best move. If the queen were to block, I think I probably would have traded. But instead, he went for king f7. And now the best move is actually to take on a7. But I found a brilliant move instead. And if you want to pause the video and try to find it, then I encourage you to. Don't look at the stockfish lines, because it's going to tell you the answer. But if you saw it already, then it's fine. But if you had a chance to look at that, the move is rook takes e5, sacrificing the rook. And I'm sure you see it now. You can't take the rook because knight takes back. It's a clean fork. And yes, you can win the knight, but I mean, this is game over, right? I'm up a queen for a rook, and I have an extra pawn. I guess the extra pawn's here, and this is GG. So that's why you can't take the rook. Where were we? Here we are. And the one thing I was concerned about was queen d1. If I somehow get back rank checkmated, but even this doesn't work because my knight and the rook see the same square, so I can actually just block with my rook. And I just won a pawn for free there. So that was best case scenario, is he takes and then I win immediately. And worst case scenario, if he checks me, I just bring the rook back. So this is the brilliant move. And he played b6 attacking my queen. I gave this check while also saving my rook because he has to move his king and I can save it. King g6. Now I went for knight h4 And notice my queen and rook are doing a good job of cutting off all the escape squares, and his own pawns are limiting the king's movement as well. So the king's only move is to go to h7. Now I went for queen e4 check. Stockfish likes queen c2 better. Not sure why. I mean, it's the exact same thing, just from two different squares on the same diagonal. But okay, whatever. And here, if he had went f5, the game would have lasted a little bit longer, because I probably would have just traded queens and went into an endgame, because now I'm up a full knight for no pawns. But he didn't do that. He moved his king back, and now I have a mate in 6, which starts with rook e8, and actually it's a mate in 5 if you sack the queen, but he didn't sack the queen, he moved the king instead, and now I delivered the final blow with queen to g6. A really nice rook covers all the squares, queen protects the rook through x-ray, and knight protects queen. Checkmate, where all of the pieces play a role. So with that, we win the second game as well. And yeah, that's it for the second game. Let's move on to the final game. Alright, game number 3, I have the black pieces again. And this is the second game this tournament that I have the black pieces. But in the first one, my opponent played d4, right? Yeah, they went d4, so I had to go d5. What was that? That was Gotham Chess, not me, because it was on review mode and he's my coach. So, anyways, so they went d4 and I responded with d5. So we got this queen's pawn position, which means I couldn't play my favorite Caro-Kann defense, as all of my viewers know, or if you're a returning viewer. But in this game, my opponent did indeed play e4, which means of course I had to play the Caro-Kann defense in the last game of this tournament. And yes, I know you're wondering that there's a 2 bishops checkmate in this video, and the other 2 games did not end in a 2 bishops checkmate, so this must be the game that ended in it. And if you figured all that out, then good job, and please don't skip ahead, because this was really neat. My opponent played f3 for some reason. I don't know how this is an excellent move. Like, you have to play d4. Yeah, it's not even like the top 4 moves. Like, there's like 3 moves to 4 moves alternating. How was this a good move? I don't really know. Anyways, I went d5. My opponent took. I mean, Stockfish says it's a mistake, but I think it's pretty reasonable. And then you go like d4 or something. He gave a check. I blocked. We're both developing pieces. I attack his bishop. Bishop d3 is a mistake because now I get the entire center for myself. And he's blocked his own pawn in from developing, which is the reason why you should take my knight, or you should go here. And if I keep attacking, you just go back. There's absolutely no problems with that. I said to go knight f6 before pushing my e5 pawn, just to defend this pawn once more. And after he goes here, now I attack the knight moves, and now I take, which is apparently a mistake, but I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, I guess their point is that, like, if the knight is here already, then let them take and waste their moves, and don't waste your moves. So, the best move, but their best move is to go knight e5 or knight d5, which is still wasting one of my knight moves. So, I'm not really sure. But anyways, bishop takes back, and now I go e5, getting the entire center for myself, also preparing this bishop for development. Castles, and now I play a sneaky move, bishop c5. If you want to pause the video and find out what I'm doing here, then you can. It's actually pretty obvious, but my opponent didn't see it, so that's why it's a sneaky move. Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the idea here is that my bishop is lined up on the king with only one piece in between. And whenever that happens, you have to start looking for moves that move this piece and give a check. So wherever I move this piece, well, since it's a pawn, it only has one move. But if it were like a knight or something, it would have multiple moves. So wherever I move this piece, it's going to be a check. Which means if I go here, it's a discovered check, and they have to respond to the check either by moving the king or blocking, and then I can take the knight for free. So those are kind of tactics you have to look out for. And unfortunately, my opponent didn't see it, and they went a3 instead, probably looking for b4. So now I did play d3 check, which is my idea the entire time, and I won a knight immediately. Now, I gotta admit, I did give my opponent a little bit of counterplay that was totally unnecessary, but other than that, I was pretty much winning the entire time. So queen e2, I defend my pawn, b4, I move my bishop back, and actually here I remember, I wanted to put my queen here and my bishop here, so that I could threaten checkmate by doing another discovered attack, only it wouldn't work because the queen can take with check, so I needed to castle before it happened, and I was like, that's too many moves, how am I gonna do that, like, without getting my opponent suspicious? And then he took here, so he's attacking my pawn, so it was the perfect excuse for me to defend it with my queen, which was actually setting up this later on. And then he attacked my bishop, which was another excuse for me to move back so I can set up this later on. And then he attacked my pawn again, which meant I had to defend it again, so it gave me another excuse to go bishop c7. So I basically got 3 excuses to do exactly what I want from my opponent, which I thought was kind of funny. Even though I never actually came up on this idea because he blocked it with his own pawn, it was still pretty funny. So he went f4, I defended again with f6, he went bishop b2, attacking again, and now I was like, okay, whatever, I don't care about my pawn, I mean, I have no way of defending it, let me just castle and get this king to safety, because here he'd already castled and moving his king and stuff, so I was behind in development. So he decided to take, and it's a good thing that I didn't take back, because now bishop takes and he can actually force a bishop trade. So it's actually better that I didn't take back, and it's good that I went queen e6, the best move. He decides to take my pawn again, and now the only good move is taking the queen because it allows me to take back the next move, which is exactly what happened. He went rook f2, attacking my pawn. I defended it, and we just shuffled some pieces around. He doubled up on the file, and then I defended it. He went h3. I brought my bishop in, maybe trying to attack this rook. I gave a check, and then he got pinned, but it's not actually a pin because he just has d4, so I don't actually win any material. And then bishop c4, attacking the rook. I bring my other rook into play, right? This piece was doing nothing, now it's doing a lot. And he decided to trade, which I don't know why he did, because he's down a bishop for a few pawns, so he probably shouldn't be trading, but that's good for me. Then he went king g2, setting up another trade, because now this rook is pinned, and, my bishop is protecting the rook, so it's going to be a forced trade. And now I was completely winning. It was just a matter of conversion. Also, not to mention, I haven't said anything about the clock in any of these games, but it was 25 minutes with 5-second delay, which means each move at the start of the move, you get 5 seconds to move before your clock starts ticking down. So if you make a move within 5 seconds, you're not going to lose any time. So losing on time is going to be really hard. But that doesn't mean that getting low on time isn't being pressure. Like, I was in pressure here because I only had like 5 minutes on the clock and my opponent had like 12. So, I had to watch out a little bit. Anyways, I started attacking his pawn. I brought my king forward. And then he defended, or I guess he stopped me from going here. I gave a check. We traded pawns. I don't know why he played a4. That was just a free pawn. We traded some more. And then we traded pawns again. We just traded a lot in this game. Honestly, I didn't even see that my f6 pawn was hanging. I was just like, okay, let me attack this pawn. And then when he took, I was like, oh my god, he took. I have to take now. And they went king f3. I brought my bishop back. h4, bishop d6. And what I did here, essentially, was I created a wall so that if you look at all the squares I'm occupying, the king actually cannot come forward. So let me make a red laser. These are the squares my bishops are lasering, right? So the king, the only way for the king to attack my bishop would be to like come here, but the pawn is in the way, so it can't come there either. Which means that the king literally cannot target my bishop in any way, shape, or form. So that was good. And then I brought my king in, getting opposition. He stopped me from pushing my pawn, which I thought was annoying. So I decided to go bishop b4 and push my pawn so that the pawn guards the bishop and the bishop guards the pawn. And here, this is a mistake. And there is one move and only one move that draws the game. Everything else loses. If you want to find it, pause the video and try to find it. Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is actually bishop to f6. So let's talk about the other moves first. First of all, you could push this pawn and lose it for free. And you could also push this pawn and lose it for free. So you can't push both of the pawns. And if you move the king, let's say here, now I can check you, force the king out of the way, and then just wait around. And eventually I can push this pawn and use the two bishops. And he's going to have to sacrifice a bishop. And that's going to be good for me. If you move the king here, then it's the same kind of idea. I go here, and I basically make a path for the pawn to move forward. After I move my bishop, I move the pawn forward. Then I get the pawn here, and then I put my bishop on this diagonal, etc., etc. And finally, if the king goes here, then we just push the pawn. He has no way of stopping it. So the only way you can stop it is, I think, here. And then, how do you even stop this pawn? Oh, and then you go here. And here you just give up the bishop, try to lure this bishop away, and eventually queen. And that's how you win. And so we've looked at all the king moves. Pawns can't move. So what about the bishop? Well, if the bishop moves anywhere over here, then you're going to lose this pawn. So you can't do that. And notice on this diagonal, it can't move to e7 because of this bishop. It can't move to g5 because of the king. It can't move to h4 because of its own pawn. So the only square left is bishop f6. So I thought it was really amazing how, every move had a reason of why it lost. And bishop f6 was the only move that works. It's kind of like, in a puzzle where there's like 20 different moves and only one of them works. And you're like, how does that make sense? Like, why does it have to be that specific move? And then you look around and you're like, if you go there, then there, there, then there, there, then there. It's kind of the same way here, and I thought that was pretty cool. So bishop f6 is the only move that draws, because there's no way for black to make progress, I guess. But my opponent didn't do that, and instead, hold on to your hats, sacrificed the bishop, and took on a5. And I guess my opponent thought that one of these pawns was gonna queen, and I had to sacrifice my bishop to take it. So what they must have thought was that, let's say this pawn was on d7 and it was about this queen, then I would have to sacrifice my bishop to take, and then, I can take this, but I can't checkmate with one bishop, so it's gonna be a draw. But as we all know from the title and thumbnail of today's video, that's not what happened. So, king c5, I took this pawn. And mind you, right now I had like a minute on the clock, right? So, it was really getting pressured for me. And like 10 people were watching. So I was like, oh god, we better do this, right? And this is my first time having two bishops and like no pawns on the board. Because usually when this happens, there's like an extra pawn here and like an extra pawn here, and I just queen. And you win with the queen. But here, there's I literally only have two bishops. So, we gotta be careful. I bring the king. The pawn goes forward. I bring the king again. King d5. Bishop d7. Now we have this bishop, protection system that I was talking about earlier, where the king cannot go anywhere because it's cut off on all of these squares like a laser beam. So king moves out of the way. I go here. And after king d4, I had like a rush of relief. Like I was so relieved after this move because now I can't lose on time. Like even if I lose on time, it's considered a draw because my opponent doesn't have any material. And after king d6, you probably want to see how I converted this. It was kind of boring because according to Stockfish, it's for some reason saying minus 81, but before it was saying like made in 13 or 14 or something. And I won on move 83. Yeah, so it was kind of depressing. It took about like 27, 28 moves. But here we go. Bishop f6, king f4, or oh yeah, don't mind like the mistake icons and stuff. Like I don't know why it does that. Bishop e6, king e4, bishop e5. I'm making the box smaller so that I have this kind of laser beam idea, but I'm doing it in order to get the two bishops checkmate. Bishop d5, king d3. Move the king closer. King c4. Alright, make it smaller. Bring the king back to defend, right? We don't want to accidentally give up the bishop for no reason. Bishop d4. Notice, like, a few moves ago, where was it? Like here, or maybe not there, like here. It was the same position, except everything is one row behind. See that? See how it changes? Everything's just one row ahead. Behind, ahead. Behind, ahead. So, I'm slowly but surely getting the king to the edge of the board, which is my goal for now. So he finally goes to the edge of the board. We defend the bishop. And now we have him stuck on the edge of the board. These bishops are now controlling every square possible, such that this king is now have to alternate. So, obviously, the king has to be on the corner. Like, the way you win is the king's on the corner. Your king is here controlling these two squares. One of the bishops is here controlling this square, or anywhere on this diagonal. And one of the bishops is, like, on this diagonal, giving the checkmate. That's how you have to have the ending position. So how do you force the king out of here? Well, you bring the king forward, and now I did a little bit of shuffling around, but what I figured out is that you need to take opposition with your king and have one of these squares occupied by a bishop. So this one is now occupied, which means this is the only move. Okay, great. How do we make progress? Well, we make a waiting move, because this king can't escape, and it can't escape here. So where does it go? It goes back. Okay, now we give a check. Bishop is cutting it off, has to go here. Now we move the bishop out of the way, because these two are controlled, this is controlled, and this is controlled. Only one move. Move the king closer. King e1. Now we have the same exact opposition, and this bishop is controlling this square. So just give a check, force the king this way. Now what do we do? Make a waiting move. Bishop, king, king, bishop. Only one move. Move the king closer. If the king goes to the corner, you just keep moving the king closer, and it's the same thing as what happened in the game. Watch. Check. King has to go here, right? The bishop cuts this off, the bishop gives the check. Now we move the king closer. King cannot go here because of the bishop, so it has to move to the corner. And now we make one waiting move, because if the king were here, then we can start checking immediately. But the king is on the wrong square, so we have to wait one singular move. And after the king moves, now we give a check with the bishop. This bishop is controlling the square. King is taking opposition. So the king has to go to the corner. And bishop to d5 is a checkmate in one. And that is how I got the two bishops checkmate in an over-the-board game. For the first time. Actually, it's the first time I got it in any game, for that matter. I haven't got it on chess.com or Lichess or anywhere else. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. I really did. With that, we win all 3 games. And I got first place and a big trophy for getting all 3 games. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Please let me know in the comments how it was. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye! Like and subscribe!